Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we take the questions and sources you share with us and explore what's really going on. We cut through the noise to get to the most interesting insights.
That's right. We're here to help you navigate the information, spotting the crucial details and connecting the dots.
Today, we're diving into a truly fascinating corner of human interaction with the natural world. Communicating with birds through sound.
Yeah, it's quite specific.
We're pulling insights from a detailed study, a thesis actually, completed back in 2018, focusing specifically on birders in Estonia.
And this research, it's based on surveys, interviews, actual observations, right there in the field. It digs into how people use bird sounds. Are they mimicking themselves or using recordings?
Okay.
And it gets at why they do it, the techniques, and even the ethical side of things, which gets pretty thorny.
Right. So our mission for this deep dive is to really understand this.
Yeah.
Why do people do it? How are they doing it? Especially, with all the tech we have now.
Yeah.
And what does it all mean? Not just for us, the humans, but maybe more importantly for the birds themselves.
Okay, let's unpack this. What's fascinating right off the bat is this study frames it all through a concept called Umwelt.
Umwelt, okay. German word.
Yeah, it basically means the subjective world of an organism. Every living thing, you, me, a bird, an insect, we all perceive the world differently.
Based on our senses, our processing.
Exactly, based on physical capabilities and how our brains or whatever processing unit we have make sense of it.
So my world isn't your world, and a bird's world is, wow, way different.
Totally. Their senses are tuned differently. So for any real interaction to happen, especially using sound, there has to be some kind of overlap.
A connection point.
Yeah, a connection of meaning between these subjective worlds. We need to send or receive signals the other kind of understands.
Even if maybe we interpret them differently than intended.
Precisely. Humans, we have this amazing ability for sound production, perception. We can engage with sounds other species make.
But we might hear a call and think, that means danger, when the bird meant it as, I don't know, a location call to another bird.
Exactly. Potential for connection, but also, misunderstanding.
And the study makes a point. This isn't like, training your dog.
No, not at all. If this is wild-bird interaction, it's a whole different ballgame.
And it's not just sound, right? Other things matter.
Oh, yeah. Vision, for example, can heavily influence how these acoustic interactions play out. A bird hears your perfect owl hoot.
But then it sees, well, me, a big primate.
Right. That might change its reaction quite a bit.
Okay, so thinking about our side, the human side.
Yeah.
What are our capabilities? And maybe more importantly, our limits with bird sounds.
The study looks right at that. Our voices, for one thing, are incredibly unique.
Shaped by biology, but also culture, language.
Exactly. The research mentions how our native language can actually filter how we hear and produce sounds. Like the classic example, some language speakers having trouble distinguishing R and L.
So that influences how we'd even try to copy a bird sound.
Definitely. And it's not just our voice. Our hearing isn't like a perfect tape recorder either.
Oh, so?
Well, they cite experiments showing visual cues can change where we think a sound is coming from. Our senses are all kind of mixed together.
That is interesting.
And here's something really fascinating. The human ear itself isn't neutral. It selectively amplifies certain frequencies.
Amplifies, like boosts the volume.
Sort of. Our peak sensitivity is around 3 kilohertz. So the exact same sound wave hitting a bird's ear might literally sound different to them than it does to us.
Because their ears tune differently. Wow.
Yeah. And beyond just hearing the sound, there are cognitive limits. You might know the classic magic number research, 7 plus or minus 2.
Vaguely, yeah. Short-term memory.
Kind of. It suggests we can only reliably track or categorize about 5 to 9 distinct things based on a single dimension, like, say, sound frequency or loudness.
Okay, so a complex bird song with rapid changes.
Exactly. It was incredibly hard to accurately analyze or even remember those details just by ear, historically. You couldn't easily build up a reliable mental library without some help.
So given these limits, how we hear, how we process, what our voices can do, how do people actually make bird sounds effectively?
Well, the study breaks it down. Some sounds are maybe surprisingly pretty easy with just the human voice.
Like what?
Usually short sounds, fairly low pitch. mostly in the 100 to 800 hertz range.
Okay.
The common cuckoo, cuckoo is the big example in the study. Apparently the most imitated bird by the Estonian birders surveyed.
Because it's common and the sound is doable.
Pretty much. It fits right in that accessible vocal range. The study even shows sound pictures, spectrographs, comparing the real call and a human trying it. Not identical, but you can see the pattern.
What about higher pitch sounds?
Right. For those, maybe up to 5,000 hertz, you might need to whistle, maybe combine it with voice.
And for the really high stuff, above 5 kilohertz.
Then you're often looking at mechanical whistles. Like, the study confirms, yes, a special hazel grouse whistle. That's a real tool some birders use.
A dedicated grouse whistle.
Okay.
What about complex sounds like alarms?
Yeah, those are tougher. You might not replicate the exact sound, but you can imitate the type of sound production. There's a technique called pishing.
Pishing.
Making that psh sound. The study says it's maybe more common in America, but some Estonian birders use it too to kind of mimic that complex, noisy quality of some alarm calls.
But some sounds, they're just impossible for us.
Pretty much. Birds have this unique vocal organ, the syrinx. It's lower down than our voice box.
And it lets them do things we can't.
Exactly. They can produce incredibly complex songs, sometimes making two different sounds at once because different parts can vibrate independently. Our vocal cords just aren't built for that.
Which brings us back to those limitations. Our ears, our memory for sound. Makes sense that technology became so important.
Absolutely. True scientific study of bird sounds really stalled until tech caught up.
And the big game changers were
The tape recorder, obviously, huge. But maybe even more revolutionary was the sound spectrograph.
the thing that makes sound pictures, sonograms.
Exactly. That device turning sound into a visual pattern. The study compares its impact to, like, the microscope for studying tiny life forms. It was that big a deal for bioacoustics.
Because it makes sound permanent, viewable.
Yes, it allows for what the study calls objectivation. A fleeting sound becomes an object you can keep, replay, analyze, compare, even when the bird's long gone.
And now, fast forward, look where we are. Moore's Law, tiny computers.
Right. What started with bulky tape recorders, then maybe CDs. Now, the survey found, it's overwhelmingly MP3 players and smartphones.
Your phone is basically a tiny, powerful computer.
Yep. Combine that with efficient audio formats like MP3, data compression, you can carry thousands of bird sounds in your pocket.
This study calls this exaptation, right? Using tech for something it wasn't originally designed for.
Exactly. Phones weren't made for birding, but they're perfect for it in many ways.
And it's not just playing sounds back, it's connecting to those huge online databases.
Crucial point. Things like eBird, Xenocanto, birders in the field can literally pull up recordings from anywhere in the world on their phone.
To compare what they're hearing right now helps with ID.
Massively. And all that data uploaded by users everywhere, it's not just for hobbyists. Scientists use it too to track bird patterns on a global scale. It's citizen science in action.
So people have the tools. Why are they using them? Where does this sound imitation or playback actually happen in Estonia, according to this study?
Well, there are a few main contexts. A big one is definitely scientific work and surveys.
It's for research.
Yeah. Playback is actually part of established methods for monitoring bird populations, especially for birds that are hard to spot but easy to hear.
Like owls again, or that corncrake you mentioned.
Exactly those. You play a recording to see if they respond, helps count them, or sometimes to draw them into a specific area for observation, or even into mist nets.
Mist nets, for catching them.
Yeah, gently, for things like banding them, putting rings on their legs, or maybe attaching tiny tracking devices, geolocators, to study where they migrate.
The study mentioned some specific examples, didn't it? Like using recordings from other places.
It did. Like, they found a finished recording of ortolan buntings worked better than local Estonian ones for surveys there, or that a slightly more aggressive corncrake call got a stronger reaction.
But it also said this method is controversial.
Oh, definitely, even within the scientific community. It's effective for data, but there are ethical debates about disturbing the birds.
Okay, besides science.
Education is another area. Think about kids at a nature camp.
Using sound to bring birds closer.
Exactly. Maybe attract them near a mist net so kids can see a bird up close, safely handled by experts, of course. It's about creating that direct connection with nature.
Fighting the extinction of experience, as the study puts it.
Precisely, getting people, especially kids, connected.
And then there's just regular bird watching. Hobby birding.
Yep. Driven by all that portable tech. A lot of hobbyists use sound mainly for ID. Hear something, check the phone recording.
Makes sense.
But some also use playback to try and lure a bird out for a better view, or maybe to tick it off their list if it's a species they're looking for.
Okay, so the big question, does it actually work reliably? Getting a bird to respond,
Well, the study makes it clear it's really variable, lots of factors involved.
like the species itself.
Huge factor. Some species just seem way more responsive. The study mentions smaller owls like the pygmy owl and some woodpeckers like the gray-headed. They seem quite willing to engage, sometimes having long duets with imitated calls.
Any others?
Long-tailed tits are mentioned too. Apparently they're easily attracted by calls and often come check things out in these curious little flocks.
But it's not just the species, is it? It can be the individual bird.
Absolutely. Just like people, some birds are bolder, more curious, others are naturally shy or maybe more aggressive.
And timing must be key.
Critical. Birds are way more likely to respond when they're motivated, like defending territory or looking for a mate.
So breeding season is prime time.
Often, yes. Using playback during sensitive times like nesting or deep winter when they need to save energy, that's generally considered less ethical. You might be causing real harm.
And time of day matters? Weather?
Yep. Calling owls at night makes sense. And wind. If it's really windy, birds might not hear the playback well, or you might not hear their response.
What about how good the imitation is? Does it have to be perfect?
Interestingly, accuracy matters, but maybe not perfectly. Sometimes even a slightly off imitation can get a reaction, maybe just curiosity. And sometimes related species might respond to the same call. Or using predator sounds can actually attract prey species. They might come to mob the perceived threat.
And the bird knowing it's a human, that matters too.
Seems likely. Their response might change if they see you. The study notes some birders try to, stand still or hide to seem less obvious or threatening.
Which leads us right back to the ethics. This whole practice. It's controversial.
It really is. The study explores this tension quite a bit.
The main worry is harming the birds.
Yeah.
Right. Stressing them out.
Exactly. Making them waste precious energy responding to a fake rival or mate, especially during breeding or migration when energy is crucial. That's the core concern.
But there's another side. People arguing it's acceptable sometimes.
Yes. Some argue that if it's done sparingly for a clear purpose like vital scientific monitoring, that the short-term disturbance might be outweighed by the value of the data for conservation.
The study had that quote, didn't it, about the owl?
Yeah, a powerful one. An interviewee contrasted playing sounds for an owl that returned year after year with the fact that eventually the whole area was just clear-cut. Puts the scale of threats into perspective.
A tough comparison.
It is. And the study introduces this idea of umwelt ethics.
Okay, what's that?
It's suggesting we think about our impact not just on the physical bird, but on its subjective world, its experience, its well-being within its own context and relationships.
So, from that view, maybe stressing a bird just for my hobby list, that's different from doing it for conservation research.
That's the kind of question Endoth ethics pushes you to ask. It centers the animal's perspective.
And attitudes among birders themselves vary.
Widely. Some guidebooks, many birders, strongly discourage playback unless absolutely necessary, especially in protected areas.
But others feel it's okay sometimes.
Some argue that in places with fewer birders, the study suggests Estonia might be like this compared to, say, the UK or US. The overall impact might be less severe than in places with really high birder traffic.
So it's about context.
Context, skill, and intention. The study implies that learning when and how to use sound responsibly, really thinking about the bird, is part of becoming an ethical, thoughtful birder.
Even which sound you choose.
Right. Using a simple contact call is probably less disruptive than blasting an aggressive territorial song or an alarm call. That choice itself reflects an ethical consideration.
Okay, so pulling all these threads together, what's the big picture from this deep dive?
We've seen how humans, specifically these birders in Estonia, are engaging with birds using sound. It's a mix of techniques, voice, whistles, and increasingly, these powerful digital tools like smartphones linked to global databases.
And it's driven by different things. Science, education, personal hobby.
Exactly. A whole range of motivations.
We're limited by our own biology, how we hear and make sound.
Definitely. Our umwelt has limits, but technology has just massively amplified our ability to get around some of those limits, to study, replicate, and interact with bird sounds.
But that power comes with responsibility.
That's the crux of it. The study really highlights the ethical tightrope. Using sound raises serious questions about stress, impact, our effect on the very animals we're interested in.
It pushes people to think about timing, context, the bird's well-being.
It has to. So, yeah, this Estonian study gives us a great window into these diverse practices, the ingenuity involved, but also the complex ethical landscape when our desire for knowledge or connection bumps up against the subjective world of another species.
So here's a final thought for you to ponder. Given how much more capability technology gives us to interact with the natural world, often remotely or through reproduction rather than just direct observation, how does that fundamental shift change the nature and the responsibility of our engagement with it?